Madam President, like my friend Senator Durbin, I too rise in support of Attorney General Javier Becerra, a longtime public servant, and as President Biden's nominee to be our next Secretary of Health and Human Service. For a year now, I've been saying to anybody to listen that the only way to really get our economy back on track, put parents back to work and kids back in the classroom and life back to normal in the U.S. of A. is to do all that we can to put this devastating pandemic in our nation's rear view mirror. That means vaccinating as many at-risk Americans as safely and as quickly as possible. Thankfully, under the leadership of our new president, America is leading the way in the production and the distribution of vaccines. How about that? Leading the world. And each day we're breaking records on the number of new Americans that are being vaccinated. Madam President, after going through one of the darkest periods in American history, we are finally beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But as we ramp up vaccine distribution throughout America and help make sure that all people from rural communities to urban cities have equitable access to life-saving vaccines, we need to make sure that the Department of Health and Human Services has the right leader at the helm going forward. And for my money and my judgment, that leader is Javier Becerra. I believe he is the right person for this job at this point in our nation's history. As a key member of the Biden administration, he will work with the White House. He will work with us in the Congress to tackle the coronavirus pandemic and to coordinate our nation's response to it. And just as he has done throughout his career, he will fight to expand affordable health care, address persistent health disparities, and restore HHS's mission to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. Madam President, I've heard several of my Republican colleagues call into question Javier Becerra's, Attorney General Becerra's qualifications to serve as HHS Secretary. Obviously, they're free to express their concerns. As senators, it's our duty to vet and evaluate cabinet nominees and make sure that we believe they're going to be best able to serve the American people. I take that responsibility seriously. I know our presiding officer does as well. But let me set the record straight, if I could, on Javier Becerra. I'm confident that with his decades of experience working on healthcare issues in Congress and as California's Attorney General, he will be an invaluable part of President Biden's administration as we work together to combat the pandemic nationally. Some of the critics on the other side of the aisle say that, what does he know about health care? Well, as it turns out, he served for, I want to say, 2 decades on the House Committee on Ways and Means. Last time I checked, Madam President, you may want to double check me on this, I think their primary responsibility of that committee is Medicare. And for somebody who's served that long in that committee, I bet he knows a thing or two about Medicare. As it turns out, he does. Throughout his career in public service, Javier Becerra has shown an unwavering commitment to protecting and expanding health care availability for millions of American families and workers, especially those in vulnerable communities who remain underserved. In the House of Representatives, he was a senior member of the Ways and Means Committee, which helped to make the Affordable Care Act, which is based on a Republican idea, I think, out of the Heritage Foundation in 1993. That, as I mentioned earlier, Mitt Romney helped make a household word in the state of Massachusetts when he was governor there. And I think half the people who were without health care coverage, now, who didn't have it when we created these ACA, have it today. We cut in half the number of people that don't have access to health care coverage. And in the state of Delaware, the cost of coverage is actually dropping in the exchanges. It's dropped by, I think, 19% over the last 2 years alone, as market forces are taking place and taking hold. And as Attorney General of California has been mentioned, he led the charge for a coalition of states to defend the Affordable Care Act against multiple attempts by the Trump administration to dismantle this landmark legislation altogether. And as the head, I once asked somebody, I said, what is it about your experience that would suggest you could run a big operation like the Department of Health and Human Services? And he said, well, I have run the Department of Justice in California. It's the second largest Department of Justice in the country, second only to the federal Department of Justice. I forget how many thousands, maybe tens of thousands of employees they have, but it's a huge operation in a huge state with a ton of people. And Javier Becerra brought together attorney generals from both sides of the aisle to hold opioid manufacturers accountable for the addiction crisis that we're still struggling with. And when the pandemic hit, he went to bat for Californians and everything for protections for workers from exposure to COVID-19, increasing transparency in nursing homes, to securing key safeguards for the rights of frontline healthcare personnel. His past leadership is a major reason why President Biden is asking him today to accept the responsibilities of overseeing the responses to many of our nation's most urgent needs, including the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, restoring the public confidence in vital public health institutions, and boosting family health and financial security in the wake of the pandemic. Madam President, with so much of the COVID-19 response being executed at the state and local level, we're fortunate that President Biden has chosen as his HHS Secretary Javier Becerra, a leader with relevant on-the-ground state-based experience. As a former state treasurer, former governor, former chairman of the National Governors Association, to have somebody with this kind of state-based experience, what a blessing that would be. As the head of the largest state Department of Justice in the nation, overseeing thousands of employees, Attorney General Becerra has a proven track record and the management experience necessary to take on the massive operations at HHS. He will also make, as Senator Durbin has mentioned, he'll also make history as the first Latino American to take on this role, providing an important perspective as Latinos and other minority communities continue to be disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. As we try to make sure that about a third of the American people who are saying that they're not going to take the vaccine, they don't care, they're going to take a chance. Wouldn't it be nice to have, and a lot of those people are Latino, wouldn't it be nice to have a secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services could reach out to that community, literally reach out to them and touch them and convince them that, no, this is something they should do. They should take this chance. And I'll be glad they did. So, Madam President, 4 years ago, this body confirmed President Trump's nominee for Health and Human Services within just 20 days of the start of the administration. And we knew then that this role was important to fill. It took us 20 days. And now, in the midst of a deadly pandemic, one that's taken the lives of over 530,000 Americans, toll that exceeds the number of American deaths on the battlefields of World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War in which I served, we cannot afford to let another day go by without confirming Javier Becerra. So without all that, Madam President, I just want to say, colleagues, it's time. It's overtime. And we need to confirm Javier. And I think, in fact, I'm convinced he'll do a good job. He'll make us proud. And we need him. The President needs him. And with him on board as the leader of HHS, he can go to work on behalf of the American people and put this pandemic behind us for good. And we need that day to come soon. And Madam President, I don't see anybody else waiting to speak. And I think maybe I should note the absence of a quorum.